the context of an Edwards QS4 fire alarm system, what is being described is a T-tap. A T-tap represents a method to connect a device, such as an addressable pull station, to an addressable loop using 2 wires instead of the more typical 4-wire configuration. This involves tapping into the existing loop wires at a specific point and connecting the device wires to these tapped locations. Consider an addressable loop already installed, consisting of 2 wires going out from the panel and 2 wires returning. It is permissible to tap into this loop and run 2 wires to the addressable pull station. There is no requirement to run 2 wires back to the panel from the pull station. The pull station establishes communication with the panel directly through the loop itself. The use of T-taps is generally accepted with the Edwards QS4 fire alarm system. However, it's critically important to strictly adhere to the manufacturer's instructions and ensure the installation is performed correctly. Improper installation can lead to communication failures or other system malfunctions. Several key considerations exist when implementing T-taps in fire alarm systems. Firstly, wire size and type must be compatible with the existing loop wiring and the requirements of the Edwards QS4 system. Using the wrong gauge or type of wire can create excessive resistance or introduce signal degradation, leading to unreliable communication. Secondly, the distance of the T-tap from the main loop needs careful attention. Excessive T-tap lengths can cause signal attenuation and impedance mismatches, impacting the reliable operation of the addressable devices. The manufacturer typically specifies maximum T-tap lengths, and these limits should be strictly observed. Thirdly, the quality of the connections is paramount. Loose or corroded connections can introduce intermittent faults and communication problems. Properly crimped or soldered connections, protected with appropriate insulation, are essential for long-term reliability. Fourthly, documentation of T-tap locations and wiring configurations is important for future maintenance and troubleshooting. Accurate as-built drawings or records showing the exact points where T-taps have been made can save significant time and effort when diagnosing problems or making system modifications. Fifthly, it's important to consider the total loop length and the number of devices connected to the loop. The Edwards QS4 system has limitations on the maximum loop length and the number of addressable devices that can be supported. Exceeding these limits can result in communication overloads and unreliable system operation. Before adding T-taps or devices, it is crucial to verify that the system's capacity is not being exceeded. Sixthly, proper grounding and shielding are necessary to minimize the effects of electrical noise and interference. Fire alarm systems are sensitive to electrical disturbances, and noise can disrupt communication and cause false alarms. Proper grounding and shielding techniques can help to mitigate these effects. Seventhly, regular inspection and testing of the fire alarm system, including the T-taps, are essential for ensuring continued reliable operation. Periodic testing should include verifying communication with all addressable devices, checking for loose connections or corrosion, and confirming that the system is responding appropriately to alarm conditions. Eighthly, any modifications to the fire alarm system, including the addition of T-taps, should be performed by qualified and licensed technicians. These technicians should have a thorough understanding of fire alarm system design, installation, and testing, and they should be familiar with the specific requirements of the Edwards QS4 system. Ninthly, compliance with all applicable codes and standards is mandatory. Fire alarm systems are subject to strict regulations, including the National Fire Protection Association 72, which covers the installation, inspection, testing, and maintenance of fire alarm systems. Ensure that all T-tap installations meet the requirements of these codes and standards. Tenthly, before implementing T-taps, it's advisable to consult with the manufacturer or a qualified fire alarm system designer. They can provide guidance on the proper application of T-taps, taking into account the specific characteristics of the installation environment and the overall system design. When implementing T-taps, one should consider the potential for future expansion or modifications. Leaving some slack in the T-tap wiring and providing access to the connection points can simplify future work. Additionally, carefully labeling the T-taps with the corresponding device addresses can aid in troubleshooting and maintenance. In addition to the electrical considerations, it is crucial to address the physical protection of the T-tap connections. Exposed wiring and connections are vulnerable to damage from environmental factors such as moisture, dust, and physical impact. Enclosing the T-tap connections in a protective junction box or conduit can significantly improve their durability and reliability. Furthermore, it is important to select T-tap connectors that are specifically designed for fire alarm system applications. These connectors typically feature robust construction, corrosion resistance, and secure locking mechanisms to prevent accidental disconnections. Avoid using general-purpose electrical connectors, as they may not meet the stringent requirements of fire alarm systems. The use of surge protection devices is also recommended, especially in areas prone to lightning strikes or power surges. Surges can damage sensitive electronic components in the fire alarm system, including the addressable devices connected via T-taps. Surge protection devices can help to divert excess voltage and protect the system from damage. Another important aspect of T-tap installation is the proper routing and support of the wiring. Avoid running T-tap wires in areas where they could be subject to physical damage or excessive heat. Use appropriate cable supports and fasteners to secure the wiring and prevent it from sagging or rubbing against other objects. The use of color-coded wiring can also simplify troubleshooting and maintenance. Assigning a specific color to each wire in the T-tap connection can help to identify the wires and trace them back to their origin. This can be particularly useful when dealing with complex fire alarm systems with numerous T-taps. Regular training for maintenance personnel is also crucial. Technicians who are responsible for maintaining the fire alarm system should receive periodic training on the proper procedures for inspecting, testing, and troubleshooting T-taps. This training should cover topics such as wire gauge selection, connector types, grounding techniques, and troubleshooting methods. It is also important to maintain a comprehensive record of all T-tap installations, including their location, wiring configuration, device address, and installation date. This record should be readily available to maintenance personnel and should be updated whenever any changes are made to the system. When troubleshooting T-tap related problems, it is essential to use appropriate diagnostic tools and techniques. A multimeter can be used to measure voltage, current, and resistance in the T-tap circuit. A wire tracer can be used to locate and identify specific wires in the T-tap connection. An addressable device tester can be used to verify communication with the addressable device connected via the T-tap. If a T-tap connection is found to be faulty, it is important to repair it promptly. Temporary repairs should be avoided, as they may not be reliable and could compromise the safety of the fire alarm system. Instead, the faulty connection should be replaced with a new, properly installed connection. In addition to the technical aspects of T-tap installation, it is also important to consider the aesthetic impact of the installation. T-taps should be installed in a neat and professional manner, and the wiring should be concealed whenever possible. Exposed wiring can be unsightly and can detract from the overall appearance of the building. Finally, it is essential to remember that fire alarm systems are life safety systems, and any modifications to these systems should be performed with the utmost care and attention to detail. Improperly installed T-taps can compromise the reliability of the system and could have serious consequences in the event of a fire. By following these guidelines and best practices, you can ensure that T-taps are installed safely and effectively, and that the fire alarm system continues to provide reliable protection for building occupants. When considering the practical application of T-taps in Edwards QS4 fire alarm systems, think about scenarios where their use offers distinct advantages. For instance, in retrofit projects, where adding new devices to an existing loop is necessary without completely rewiring the entire loop, T-taps can be a time-saving and cost-effective solution. However, it's vital to assess the existing loop's capacity and ensure that adding more devices via T-taps doesn't overload the system or compromise its performance. Another scenario involves complex building layouts where running a continuous loop through every room or area might be physically challenging or aesthetically undesirable. T-taps allow for strategically placing devices like pull stations or smoke detectors in specific locations without the need for extensive conduit runs or disruptive wiring. In large, open areas, such as warehouses or auditoriums, T-taps can be used to efficiently connect devices along the perimeter or at key points within the space. This approach minimizes the amount of wiring required and simplifies the installation process. However, it's important to carefully consider the spacing and placement of devices to ensure adequate coverage and timely detection of fire events. Before implementing T-taps in any of these scenarios, conduct a thorough site survey to assess the existing wiring infrastructure, identify potential challenges, and plan the T-tap locations accordingly. Consider factors such as accessibility, environmental conditions, and the presence of other electrical or communication systems that could interfere with fire alarm systems' performance. The Edwards QS4 systems documentation provides valuable information on the system's capabilities, limitations, and recommended practices for T-tap installations. Familiarize yourself with this documentation and consult with qualified technicians or system designers to ensure that the T-taps are implemented correctly and in accordance with the manufacturer's guidelines. In addition to the technical considerations, it's also important to address any regulatory requirements or local codes that may govern the use of T-taps in fire alarm systems. Some jurisdictions may have specific restrictions or guidelines on the number of T-taps allowed per loop, the maximum length of T-tap wiring, or the types of connectors that can be used. Always verify compliance with these requirements before proceeding with the installation. Remember that T-taps, while offering flexibility and convenience, can also introduce potential points of failure in the fire alarm system. Therefore, it's essential to implement robust testing and maintenance procedures to ensure the continued reliability of the T-tap connections and the overall system performance. Regular inspections should include visual checks for loose connections, corrosion, or physical damage to the wiring and connectors. Electrical testing should be performed to verify the integrity of the T-tap circuits and confirm proper communication with the connected devices. If any issues are detected during testing or inspection, take immediate corrective action to address the problem and restore the system to its proper operating condition. Furthermore, consider implementing a proactive maintenance program that includes periodic cleaning and tightening of T-tap connections to prevent future problems. This program can help to extend the lifespan of the T-tap installations and minimize the risk of unexpected failures. When making any modifications or repairs to T-tap connections, always use the appropriate tools and materials. Ensure that the wiring is properly stripped, crimped, or soldered, and that the connectors are securely fastened. Avoid using makeshift or substandard components, as they can compromise the reliability of the connection and create potential safety hazards. In addition to the physical connections, it's also important to pay attention to the software configuration of the Edwards QS4 system when implementing T-taps. Ensure that the addressable devices connected via T-taps are properly programmed and configured to communicate with the control panel. Verify that the device addresses are unique and that the system is correctly interpreting the signals from these devices. If any software-related issues are encountered, consult the Edwards QS4 systems documentation or contact technical support for assistance. By carefully considering these practical aspects and following best practices, you can effectively utilize T-taps and Edwards QS4 fire alarm systems to enhance their functionality, simplify installations, and improve overall system performance.